The slap echoed through first class like a gunshot. Crystal glasses trembled. A man in a tailored suit froze mid-sip, and for a split second, every eye lifted, only to drop just as quickly as if nothing had happened at all. Marcus Reed didn't move. A red handprint spread slowly across his cheek, sharp against his skin under the soft cabin lights. The flight attendant stood in front of him, breathing hard, already raising her voice, calling him aggressive, calling him a problem. And still, Marcus didn't react. No anger, no shouting, no defense. Just a quiet, steady gaze that didn't match the moment. Around them, the cabin went silent. Not shocked, silent. The kind of silence people choose when they don't want to get involved. When it's easier to look away than to speak up. On Marcus's tray table, something small caught the light. A thin metal card, half hidden beside his tablet, engraved with a symbol no one there seemed to recognize. Not yet, because in less than 2 minutes, that silence would break. And when it did, the same people who looked away would wish they hadn't. The sound didn't belong in a place like that. It cracked through the cabin sharp and sudden, louder than the low hum of the engines, louder than the clink of crystal glasses and quiet conversations about markets and deadlines. For a split second, it felt like the entire plane had paused mid-air, suspended in that single moment. A man in seat 2C stopped mid-sip, his wine trembling in the glass. Across the aisle, a woman in a cream coat lifted her eyes just long enough to register what had happened, then lowered them again, as if she had decided, in that instant, that it wasn't her business. Marcus Reed stood in the narrow aisle of first class, his body still, his head turned slightly from the force of the impact. The red imprint of a hand began to bloom slowly across his cheek, stark against his skin. Claire Donovan's hand hovered in the air for a fraction of a second longer before she pulled it back, her expression already shifting. The flicker of something raw, something almost uncertain, disappeared behind a practiced mask of authority. "Sit down, sir," she said, her voice controlled, cool, the tone of someone used to being obeyed. "This behavior is unacceptable." Behavior. The word hung there, unchallenged. Marcus didn't move right away. He didn't touch his face. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look angry. Instead, he turned his head slowly back toward her, meeting her eyes with a calm that didn't match the moment. It wasn't the calm of someone who didn't understand what had just happened. It was the calm of someone who did. "I was standing to speak with the cabin supervisor," he said, his voice low, even, steady enough to cut through the tension without raising it. "That's all." Claire's jaw tightened. For a brief moment, something in her eyes flickered again. Irritation, maybe, or something sharper. But she leaned into her posture, shoulders squared, chin slightly raised. "You were instructed to remain seated," she replied, louder this time, just enough for the nearby passengers to hear. "You refused. That makes you a disruption." A disruption? A man in a tailored suit across the aisle, Victor Hale, let out a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The small curl at the corner of his mouth said enough. A few heads turned. A few more stayed deliberately still. No one stood up. No one asked a question. Marcus glanced around the cabin, not searching for help, not expecting it, just observing. Taking it in the way he seemed to take everything, quietly, carefully, without rushing to judgment. Rows of leather seats stretched behind him, soft under warm lighting that was meant to make everything feel effortless, controlled, above the chaos of the world below. Glassware rested neatly on polished tray tables. A faint scent of coffee and citrus hung in the air. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for the silence. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was something heavier, The kind of silence people choose. The kind that settles in when everyone sees something they know isn't right, and decides, almost instinctively, not to be the one who says it out loud. Marcus let that silence sit for a moment. Then, without a word, he lowered himself back into seat 1A. The motion was slow, deliberate, controlled. He reached for the armrest, adjusted himself, and buckled his seatbelt with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than it should have. Claire watched him, her eyes narrowing just slightly, as if waiting for something else. A protest. A raised voice. Anything she could point to, something that would justify the escalation. It didn't come. Marcus leaned back into the seat, his gaze drifting, not to her, not to the passengers, but toward the window. Outside, the world was nothing but a stretch of deep blue sky fading slowly into evening. Inside, the tension stayed. Victor Hale shifted in his seat, glancing at Marcus again, this time a little longer. There was something about the way the man carried himself that didn't quite match the scene. It didn't fit the narrative Victor had already written in his mind, but he said nothing. Across the aisle, a young flight attendant stood frozen near the galley entrance. Lily Brooks. Her hands were clasped tightly around a folded linen napkin, the edges creasing under the pressure of her grip. She had seen everything. Her eyes moved from Claire to Marcus, then back again. Her lips parted slightly, as if she might speak, as if she might say what no one else had said. But she didn't. Not yet. Claire turned away first, smoothing the front of her uniform as if resetting the scene, as if the moment had already been resolved. "Let's keep the cabin calm," she said, addressing no one and everyone at once. "We're all here for a comfortable flight." Comfortable. The word landed strangely now. Marcus didn't respond. He reached into the pocket of his worn hoodie, frayed slightly at the cuffs, the fabric softened by time, and pulled out a small object. For a brief moment, it caught the cabin light. A thin, metallic card. It wasn't flashy. No gold trim, no bright color. Just a simple, brushed surface with a faint engraved emblem, subtle enough to miss if you weren't looking for it. He set it down on the edge of his tray table, almost absently. Lily noticed. Her eyes flickered to it, then back to his face. There was something about the way he moved, the way he didn't rush, didn't react, didn't perform. It didn't match the story everyone else seemed to believe. Claire returned to the galley, her back straight, her steps measured. But there was a tightness in her shoulders now, a barely noticeable shift in the rhythm she had perfected over years. Victor picked up his glass again, though he didn't drink. A man 2 rows back adjusted his seat, glancing toward the front before quickly looking away. The engines hummed steadily beneath it all, a constant reminder that they were miles above the ground, sealed together in a space where every choice, every silence, carried a little more weight. Marcus sat with his hands resting lightly on the armrests, his expression unchanged. No anger, no embarrassment, just stillness. And in that stillness, something else began to take shape. Quiet, almost invisible at first. Not fear, not yet, but something close to it. Because the question lingered, unspoken, but impossible to ignore. Why wasn't he angry? And more importantly, what did he know that no one else in that cabin did? Hours earlier, before the engines ever roared and the sky swallowed the city, Marcus Reed stood beneath the harsh white lights of Terminal 4 at LAX. Rain tapped softly against the tall glass windows, streaking the outside world into blurred lines of headlights and passing taxis. Inside, everything moved with quiet urgency, rolling suitcases, clipped conversations, the low murmur of announcements echoing through polished floors. Marcus didn't rush. He stood near the edge of the priority boarding lane, one hand resting lightly on the strap of a worn backpack that had seen more years than most of the luggage around him. His charcoal hoodie hung loose at the sleeves, the fabric slightly faded at the edges. His sneakers were clean, but not new. Nothing about him asked for attention, and that was exactly why he got it. A gate agent in a crisp navy uniform glanced up as the next group was called. Her eyes swept the line quickly. Business travelers in tailored coats, a couple in matching designer luggage, a man tapping impatiently on his watch. Then her gaze landed on Marcus. It paused. Not for long, just long enough to sort him into a category. "Sir," she said without looking directly at him, her tone shifting from warm to neutral. "Economy boarding will begin shortly. You can wait just behind the rope." Marcus looked at her, not confused, not offended, just steady. "My boarding pass says Group 1, he said. The agent finally met his eyes. She scanned him again. Shoes, hoodie, backpack. Something in her expression tightened, as if the information didn't fit the picture she had already drawn. "May I see it?" she asked. He handed it over. Her fingers held the paper a little firmer than necessary as she checked the details. The scanner beeped once, a clean green flash confirming what Marcus had already told her. Group 1, Seat 1A. For a fraction of a second, something like hesitation flickered across her face. Then it disappeared, replaced by a quick, practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're good to go," she said, handing the pass back. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a small step to the side, as if clearing a path she hadn't intended to block. Marcus nodded once. "Thank you." He stepped forward. Behind him, a man in a tailored gray coat leaned toward his companion and muttered something under his breath. A quiet chuckle followed. Marcus didn't turn around. He had heard worse, much worse. As he walked down the jet bridge, the sound of the terminal faded behind him, replaced by the hollow echo of footsteps on metal and the distant hum of the aircraft waiting ahead. The air grew cooler, thinner, carrying that faint scent of recycled air and machine oil. He adjusted the strap on his shoulder and kept moving. At the aircraft door, another attendant greeted passengers with a polished smile. Her eyes moved quickly from face to face, greeting some by name, offering others a polite nod. When Marcus approached, her smile hesitated, just for a second. "Welcome aboard," she said, though the warmth in her voice had dimmed slightly. "First class is to your left." Marcus stepped inside. The cabin lights were softer than the terminal, casting a warm glow over leather seats and neatly arranged glassware. The kind of space designed to make people feel important without having to say it out loud. He paused just long enough to let an older woman in front of him steady her carry-on. The bag slipped from her grip, tipping awkwardly toward the aisle. "Let me help you with that," Marcus said, already reaching for it. "Oh, thank you," she replied, surprised. "These overhead bins, they're not as easy as they used to be." He lifted the bag without effort, placing it securely in the compartment above her seat. He checked the latch once, making sure it clicked. "Should hold just fine," he said. She smiled at him, genuine this time. "You're very kind." Marcus gave a small nod. "Safe flight." He moved on. A few rows back, a young boy struggled to keep hold of a small toy airplane, the plastic wings slipping from his fingers as his mother tried to juggle a phone call and a boarding pass at the same time. The toy clattered to the floor, sliding just out of reach. Marcus bent, picked it up, and handed it back. "Don't let it fly off without you," he said. The boy grinned. "Thanks." His mother glanced up, distracted but grateful. "Thank you, I appreciate that." Marcus smiled faintly and continued down the aisle. None of it took more than a few seconds. None of it seemed important. But it stayed, in the quiet memory of the people who saw it. He reached his seat, 1A, and placed his backpack carefully in the overhead bin. As he did, the sleeve of his hoodie pulled back just enough to reveal the edge of something in his hand, a thin metal card. It caught the light for the briefest moment, a soft, dull reflection, nothing flashy. Just a clean surface with a small engraved emblem, almost too subtle to notice unless you were looking directly at it. Someone was. Near the galley, a junior attendant, Lily Brooks, watched as he slid the card back into his pocket. Her eyes lingered a fraction longer than they should have. Something about it felt familiar. But before she could place it, another voice called her name, pulling her attention away. "Lily, can you check the beverage carts?" a senior attendant said. "Yeah, of course," she replied quickly, turning back to her duties. When she looked up again, Marcus was already seated. From a distance, he looked like any other passenger who had somehow found his way into the front of the plane. Quiet, unremarkable, easy to overlook, and that was exactly how most people chose to see him. As boarding continued, the cabin filled with low conversation and the soft shuffle of people settling into place. Jackets were folded, laptops tucked away, glasses of water placed carefully on tray tables. Victor Hale took his seat in 1B, adjusting his cufflinks before glancing sideways at Marcus. His gaze lingered just long enough to form an opinion. Then he looked away. By the time the cabin doors closed, everything had fallen into place. The seats were filled. The crew moved with practiced precision. The outside world had been sealed off, replaced by the quiet, controlled environment of altitude and expectation. Marcus leaned back in his seat, eyes half closed, as if he were simply another traveler waiting to reach his destination. But somewhere beneath that stillness, something else was already in motion. Something that had begun long before he ever stepped onto the plane, and something that would not stop once it started. Because the truth was, Marcus Reed hadn't boarded that flight by accident, and whatever he carried with him into that cabin was about to change everything. The aircraft door sealed with a dull, final thud. Inside, the cabin settled into its familiar rhythm, the soft rustle of jackets being folded, the low murmur of voices blending into something almost soothing, the faint clink of glassware as flight attendants moved through the aisle with practiced grace. Marcus Reed sat in seat 1A, still and quiet, his hands resting lightly on the armrests. The overhead lights cast a warm glow across the polished surfaces, reflecting off chrome fixtures and the smooth grain of walnut tables. It was a space designed to feel controlled, elevated, removed from the world below, a space where people expected to belong, and where others were quietly reminded they didn't. Claire Donovan stepped into the aisle from the galley, tablet in hand. Her movements were precise, economical, every step measured, every glance calculated. She scanned the cabin, mentally checking each passenger against the list she had memorized long before boarding began. Regulars, high-value clients, names that mattered. Her eyes paused at seat 1B first. "Good evening, Mr. Hale," she said, her voice warm now, carrying just enough familiarity to signal recognition. "Welcome back." Victor Hale glanced up from his phone, offering a brief nod. "Claire." She smiled, just slightly, then shifted her attention to the seat beside him. Seat 1A. Her expression changed. Not dramatically, not enough for most people to notice. But the warmth faded, replaced by something sharper, something assessing. Marcus didn't look up right away. He had a small tablet open on his tray. The screen dimmed, lines of text scrolling slowly beneath his fingers. Columns of numbers, brief notes, nothing that meant anything to someone passing by. Claire stood there for a second longer than necessary. "Sir," she said. Marcus looked up. "Yes?" Her eyes moved over him again. His hoodie, the worn edges of the fabric, the sneakers, the lack of anything that signaled the kind of status she was used to managing in this cabin. "I'm going to need to see your boarding pass again." The words were polite. The tone wasn't. Marcus held her gaze for a moment, then reached into his pocket and handed it over without comment. Claire took it, her fingers tightening just slightly around the paper as she checked the details. Her eyes scanned the name, the seat, the boarding group. Everything matched. Still, her jaw tightened. "Seat 1A, she said slowly, as if repeating it might reveal a mistake. "First class." "Yes," Marcus replied. Claire tapped her tablet, pulling up the passenger manifest. Her eyes moved quickly across the screen, searching, not for confirmation, but for contradiction, something that would justify what she was already thinking. There was nothing. She handed the pass back, but not quite the way she had handed it to Mr. Hale. Not with care, not with respect. Just a small, clipped motion. "You'll need to keep that visible," she said, "in case we need to verify again." Victor let out a quiet breath beside them. Not quite a laugh. Close enough. Marcus took the pass, folded it once and set it down on the tray table without looking at it again. "That won't be necessary," he said. Claire's lips pressed into a thin line. "We'll see," she replied. She turned away, but not before her eyes flicked once more toward his seat, toward the hoodie, the stillness, the quiet confidence that didn't fit. Across the aisle, a woman in her 60s adjusted her glasses, watching the exchange out of the corner of her eye. She didn't say anything. Neither did the man behind her, who had paused mid-email to glance up before returning to his screen. The moment passed, or at least, it pretended to. Claire moved down the aisle, her attention shifting to other passengers, her voice warming again as she greeted them, offered drinks, asked about preferences. The contrast was subtle, but unmistakable. By the time she returned to the front, her expression had reset. But something had changed. She reached for the beverage cart, her movements a little sharper now. "Pre-departure drinks?" she asked, her tone smooth again as she stopped beside Victor. "Scotch," he said without looking up. "Of course." She poured it carefully, the amber liquid catching the light as it settled into the glass. She handed it to him with a small, practiced smile. "And for you, sir?" she asked, turning to Marcus. He glanced at the cart. "Sparkling water, please." Claire paused. For a fraction of a second, her eyes flicked to the bottles. Clear, chilled, lined up neatly beside the wine. Then she looked back at him. "We're out," she said. Marcus's gaze shifted, just slightly, to the cart. The bottles were right there. Cold, unopened. He looked back at her. "Tap water is fine," he said. Claire nodded once, too quickly. She reached for a plastic pitcher instead of the glass bottles, filled a tumbler halfway, then set it down on his tray with a little more force than necessary. The water rippled, sloshing lightly against the sides. "Anything else?" she asked. "No," Marcus replied. She didn't move right away. There was something in his tone, not defiant, not challenging, but certain, that unsettled her in a way she couldn't quite place. "You know," she said, lowering her voice just enough to keep it between them. "First class is meant to be a comfortable experience, for everyone." Marcus met her eyes. "I agree." The simplicity of the answer seemed to irritate her more than if he had argued. Claire straightened, turning away with a small shake of her head as she pushed the cart forward. Behind her, Victor took a sip of his drink, glancing sideways again. "He's not wrong," Victor said quietly, just loud enough for Marcus to hear. "Comfort's important." Marcus didn't respond. Victor smirked faintly, then returned his attention to his phone. A few rows back, Lily Brooks watched the exchange unfold from behind the galley curtain. Her hands were busy stacking glasses, but her eyes kept drifting forward. She had seen the bottles. She had heard the lie. Her grip tightened slightly on the glass in her hand. She glanced toward Claire, who was now laughing softly with another passenger, her earlier tension gone, or at least hidden. Lily swallowed. She knew how this worked. How small decisions turned into patterns. How patterns turned into something bigger. She looked back at Marcus. He was sitting exactly as he had been before, calm, composed, as if none of it mattered. But there was something else now, something quieter, more deliberate. On his tray table beside the untouched glass of water, the corner of his tablet screen glowed faintly. Lines of text scrolled slowly, almost unnoticed. Lily couldn't read it from where she stood, but she saw the header. Just one word, clear and sharp against the dim light. Acquisition. Her brow furrowed. Before she could think further, Claire's voice cut through the space behind her. Lily? She turned quickly. Yes? Focus on your station, Claire said, her tone cool. We have standards to maintain. Lily nodded. Of course. She went back to her work, but her mind stayed somewhere else, up in the front row, where a man in a worn hoodie sat in a seat everyone thought he didn't deserve, and somehow looked like the only person in the room who knew exactly where he belonged. The engines deepened beneath the floor as the plane began to push back from the gate. A low vibration ran through the cabin, subtle but steady, as if something larger had just started moving. Marcus closed his tablet, resting his hands on it for a moment. His eyes lifted, not to Claire, not to Victor, but straight ahead. Watching. Waiting. And as the aircraft began its slow taxi toward the runway, one quiet thought settled into the space between everything that had already happened and everything that was about to. Because the truth was, this wasn't about a seat, and it definitely wasn't over. The plane lifted off the runway with a long, steady roar, the city lights of Los Angeles stretching out beneath them like a scattered constellation. Then the wheels tucked in, the engines softened, and the cabin settled into that familiar mid-flight calm, the kind that made everything feel distant, contained, almost unreal. Inside first class, the air grew quieter. Seatbelts clicked open, jackets loosened. Conversations resumed in low, measured tones, as if nothing unusual had happened at all, as if a man hadn't been struck in the aisle just minutes earlier. Marcus Reed sat in 1A, his gaze resting on the darkening horizon outside the window. The red mark on his cheek had faded slightly, but it was still there, a faint reminder of something the cabin had already begun to forget. Or pretend to forget. Claire Donovan moved through the aisle with her usual precision, her posture flawless, her expression composed. If anyone had walked in at that moment, they would have seen nothing but a well-run cabin, orderly, efficient, exactly as it should be. But the details told a different story. When she reached Marcus's row, her steps slowed just enough to register. Not hesitation, calculation. She stopped beside Victor Hale first, her smile returning, soft and polished. "Another drink, Mr. Hale?" she asked. Victor didn't look up right away. He finished typing something on his phone, then glanced at her with a faint, approving nod. "Why not?" he said. "Same as before." "Of course." She poured the scotch with care, steady hands, perfect control. The liquid settled into the glass without a single spill. She placed it gently on his tray table, aligning it just so. Then she turned. Her smile faded before she even fully faced Marcus. "Anything for you?" she asked. The question sounded routine. It wasn't. Marcus turned his head slightly toward her. "A towel would be helpful," he said. Claire glanced at the small stack of neatly folded white towels resting just behind her on the service cart. They were clean, pressed, ready to be used. She didn't reach for them. "We're a bit busy at the moment," she replied. "I'll get to it when I can." Her tone was light, almost casual, but the meaning landed heavy. Marcus looked at the towels, then back at her. "That's fine," he said. Claire gave a short nod and moved on. The cart rolled forward, its wheels barely making a sound against the carpeted aisle. But the absence of the towel, something so small, so simple, lingered in the space she left behind. Victor lifted his glass, watching Marcus over the rim. "You know," he said, his voice low, conversational, "some people would have made a scene by now." Marcus didn't answer. Victor smiled faintly. "Guess not everyone's built that way." Still nothing. Victor leaned back in his seat, clearly satisfied with the silence, as if he had just proven a point no one else needed to hear. A few rows behind them, a man in a navy blazer adjusted his reading glasses, glancing forward briefly before returning to his tablet. Across the aisle, a woman scrolled through her phone, her expression carefully neutral. The cabin was full of witnesses. None of them were participants. Near the galley, Lily Brooks stood with her back to the curtain, her hands resting on the counter. She had heard the exchange. She had seen the towels. Her eyes flicked toward the front again. They were still there, unmoved, unclaimed. Her fingers curled slightly against the edge of the counter. It wasn't a big thing. That's what made it worse. It was small, quiet, easy to ignore. Exactly the kind of thing people let pass without thinking. Claire stepped back into the galley, setting down an empty tray with a soft but deliberate clatter. She didn't look at Lily right away. "Keep things moving," she said, her voice low but firm. "We don't need delays up front." Lily hesitated. "He asked for a towel." Claire finally turned to her. "And?" Lily swallowed. "We have them." Claire's expression didn't change. "We also have priorities," she said. "Learn the difference." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. Lily nodded, though her chest felt tight. "Yes, ma'am." Claire held her gaze for a moment longer, then turned back to the cart, rearranging glasses that didn't need rearranging. The message was clear. Don't question. Don't interfere. Lily looked down at her hands, then back toward the cabin. Marcus hadn't moved. He sat exactly as he had before, his posture relaxed, his attention drifting between the window and the quiet rhythm of the flight. The untouched glass of water still sat on his tray, a thin line of condensation forming along its side. He reached for a napkin instead, unfolding it carefully and pressing it lightly against the edge of his tablet, where a faint trace of moisture had collected earlier. The motion was slow, deliberate, as if time for him moved at a different pace than it did for everyone else. Lily took a step forward, then stopped. Her eyes shifted back toward Claire, who was now speaking with another passenger, her tone warm again, her smile perfectly in place. Lily exhaled slowly and stepped back. The plane leveled out at cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign dimming with a soft chime. A subtle shift moved through the cabin, shoulders relaxing, conversations picking up, the illusion of normalcy settling in once more. But something underneath it had changed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't visible, but it was there, a tension that hadn't been there before. Victor noticed it first, not consciously, not in a way he could explain, just a slight discomfort. A feeling that something about the situation hadn't resolved the way it should have. He glanced at Marcus again. There was still no anger, no frustration, No attempt to correct the narrative that had been built around him. Just that same quiet stillness. Victor frowned slightly. That wasn't how this usually went. People argued, defended themselves, pushed back. They didn't sit there like that, as if they knew something no one else did. Across the aisle, the woman in the cream coat shifted in her seat, glancing up again, then quickly away. The man behind her adjusted his collar, clearing his throat quietly. Small movements, small reactions. But they added up. Marcus reached forward and picked up his tablet. The screen lit softly, casting a faint glow across his face. Lines of text appeared again, structured, precise, the kind of information that didn't belong to casual browsing. His thumb moved once, scrolling, then again. On the top of the screen, just visible for a moment before he adjusted the angle, a line stood out. Control pathways, pending. Lily saw it. Just for a second. Her breath caught. Before she could process what it meant, Marcus closed the tablet, resting his hand on it lightly. He leaned back again, eyes forward. Waiting. Not reacting. Not engaging. Waiting. And as the quiet hum of the engines filled the cabin once more, a single question began to take shape. Not spoken, not acknowledged, but impossible to ignore. If this man wasn't fighting what was happening to him, then what exactly was he preparing for? The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the plane settled into its long, steady climb above the clouds. Outside, the sky had deepened into a quiet blue-black, the last traces of sunset fading into a thin line along the horizon. Inside, the stillness grew heavier. It wasn't obvious, not at first. Conversations continued in low voices. Ice shifted in glasses. A soft laugh rose from somewhere near row 3, then disappeared just as quickly. But underneath it all, something had tightened. Marcus Reed sat in 1A, his hands folded loosely over his tablet, his gaze drifting forward, not unfocused, not distracted, but fixed somewhere just beyond the visible. The untouched glass of water still sat beside him, the condensation now pooling faintly onto the tray. He reached forward and adjusted it slightly, the movement small, almost careful. Across the aisle, Victor Hale watched him again. Longer this time. There was something about Marcus's stillness that didn't fit. It didn't match the pattern Victor was used to. He had seen people challenged before, seen them fold, argue, get defensive, lose control. But this wasn't resistance. It was something else entirely. Victor leaned back, studying him openly now. "You ever think," he said, voice low but clear enough to carry, "that maybe you're in the wrong place?" A few heads turned again, subtle, curious. Marcus didn't look at him. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," he said. Victor smiled faintly. "That so?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. No emphasis. No need to prove anything. Victor let out a soft breath through his nose, shaking his head slightly, as if amused by something only he understood. "Confidence," he murmured. "Gotta respect it." But his eyes didn't leave Marcus. Claire Donovan reappeared at the front of the cabin, her posture as sharp as ever. She paused near the galley, scanning the room again, her gaze flicking from passenger to passenger before landing once more on seat 1A. The tension there hadn't faded. If anything, it had sharpened. She stepped forward, her heels quiet against the carpet, her expression composed but tighter now, more deliberate. "Sir," she said. Marcus turned his head slightly. "Yes?" "I need you to remain seated for the duration of the flight, unless otherwise instructed." The words sounded procedural, but they weren't. Marcus studied her for a moment. "The seatbelt sign is off," he said calmly. Claire's lips pressed together. "That doesn't change the request," she replied. "We've already had an incident." The word hung there, Incident. Victor shifted slightly in his seat, watching the exchange with growing interest. Marcus leaned forward just enough to rest his forearms on the tray. "I stood up to speak with your supervisor," he said. "That's not an incident." Claire's voice dropped, quieter now, edged with something sharper. "It is when it disrupts the cabin." The cabin. The word again. As if everyone else belonged to it. As if Marcus did not. A faint ripple moved through the surrounding seats. A man behind them adjusted his posture, glancing over the top of his glasses. The woman in the cream coat stilled her scrolling, her eyes lifting once more. Still no one spoke. Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand your position," he said. Claire blinked. That wasn't the response she expected, but she didn't step back. "Good," she said. "Then we won't have any more issues." She turned to leave. Marcus stood. The movement was smooth, unhurried, but it cut through the air like a line being drawn. Claire froze mid-step. "I'd still like to speak with your cabin supervisor," Marcus said. The cabin shifted again, this time more noticeably. Victor leaned forward slightly. Claire turned back, her expression tightening instantly. "I've already addressed your concern," she said. "I don't believe you have." The words were soft, measured, but they landed harder than anything said so far. Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You're creating a situation that doesn't need to exist," she said. "Sit down." Marcus didn't move. He wasn't blocking the aisle. He wasn't raising his voice. He wasn't doing anything that could be called aggressive, but he wasn't complying either. That, somehow, was worse. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably now. The silence felt different, less passive, more strained. As if something was building and everyone could feel it, even if they didn't understand what it was. Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, angling it slightly. Not obvious, but enough. Recording. Marcus took a small step forward, just enough to move past Claire. Their shoulders brushed. Barely. A moment that should have meant nothing. Claire gasped. Loud. Too loud. "Do not touch me," she snapped, her voice cutting through the cabin. Every head turned now, the illusion of privacy shattered completely. Marcus stopped immediately, his hands still at his sides. "I didn't," he said. But Claire was already moving. Her hand came up fast, faster than anyone expected. The sound cracked through the cabin again. Not as loud as before, but sharper, more deliberate. Marcus's head turned slightly with the motion, the second mark landing over the first, a deeper shade now spreading across his cheek. For a moment, everything stopped. The engines still hummed, the lights still glowed, but inside the cabin, nothing moved. Victor's phone froze mid-record. The woman in the cream coat stared openly now, her lips parted slightly. The man behind them lowered his glasses completely. Even Claire seemed to pause, just for a fraction of a second, as if something in the moment had slipped beyond her control. Then she stepped back, her expression shifting again, this time faster, more urgent. "He pushed me," she said, her voice rising. "He tried to force his way through." The words came too quickly, too clean. Marcus didn't speak. He didn't reach for his face. He didn't step back. He simply looked at her. And in that look, something changed. Not anger, not shock, something colder. Something that made the silence feel heavier than before. Victor swallowed slightly, his phone lowering just a fraction. Because for the first time since the flight began, this didn't feel like a misunderstanding anymore. It felt like something else entirely, something bigger. And somewhere deep beneath the quiet hum of the aircraft, beneath the tension and the unspoken questions and the watching eyes, Something had just crossed a line, and there was no going back. For a moment, no one moved. The cabin sat frozen in a kind of suspended disbelief, the air thick with something no one wanted to name. The sound of the slap still lingered, not in the air, but in the way people held their breath, in the way eyes stayed fixed just a second too long before looking away. Claire Donovan took a step back, her hand still half raised, her chest rising and falling a little faster now. Then her expression changed. It happened quickly, too quickly. The tight control, the authority. It didn't disappear. It shifted, warped, turned into something else. Fear. Not real fear. Performed fear. "He grabbed me," she said, her voice suddenly unsteady. "He tried to push past me." The words landed into the silence like a script already written. A murmur moved through the cabin, quiet, uncertain, but enough to break the stillness. Victor Hale blinked, his phone lowering just slightly as he processed the shift. He had seen the contact. Barely a touch. Nothing that matched what she was saying now. But he didn't speak. Not yet. Claire pressed her hand lightly against her arm, as if to reinforce the claim. Her breathing grew louder, more uneven, each movement drawing attention to her. "I told him to sit down," she continued, louder now. "He wouldn't listen. He got aggressive." Aggressive. The word spread. It didn't matter that it didn't fit. It didn't matter that the scene everyone had just watched didn't match the story she was telling. Words had weight. And in a place like this, uniforms, authority, expectation, they carried more than truth. Marcus stood where he was, unmoving. He didn't interrupt, didn't raise his voice, didn't even shake his head. He simply watched her. And somehow, that made it worse, because it left space for the lie to grow. From the galley, Lily Brooks stepped forward without realizing she had moved. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides, her eyes fixed on Claire. "That's not what—" she started. Claire's head snapped toward her. The look she gave Lily was quick, sharp, and unmistakable. "Stop!" Lily's voice caught in her throat. The words died before they could fully form. Behind her, the faint metallic click of the cockpit door unlocking cut through the tension. Captain Daniel Ross stepped out. He moved with the steady, confident stride of someone used to being in control, his uniform crisp, his presence filling the narrow space immediately. His eyes moved first to Claire, her posture, her expression, the way she held herself, then to Marcus, then to the cabin. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice firm, carrying authority without needing volume. Claire turned toward him immediately. "Captain," she said, her voice tight, just on the edge of breaking. "This passenger became disruptive. He refused instructions, stood up during service, and then he put his hands on me." The words came out fast, overlapping slightly, as if speed would make them more believable. Marcus didn't speak. Captain Ross's gaze shifted to him, taking in the hoodie, the stillness, the red mark on his cheek. Then he looked back at Claire. "Did he touch you?" he asked. Claire nodded quickly. "Yes, I felt unsafe." The answer came too clean, too certain. Ross's jaw tightened. He turned fully toward Marcus now. "Sir," he said, his tone controlled but firm, "I'm going to need you to return to your seat and remain seated. We'll sort this out once we land." Marcus met his eyes. "I am in my seat," he said. Ross blinked, irritation flickering across his face. "Then you need to stay there and stop escalating the situation." "I haven't escalated anything," Marcus replied. His voice was low, even, almost too calm for the moment. Ross stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to keep the exchange contained, but not private. "My crew is telling me you're a problem," he said. "I'm giving you a chance to make this easier on yourself." A chance. The phrase hung between them. Victor shifted in his seat, watching more carefully now. The dynamic had changed. It wasn't just about Claire anymore. It was authority, system, and how quickly it could decide who was right. Marcus glanced briefly around the cabin. The same faces, the same silence. Then back to Ross. "Your crew member struck me," he said. Ross's expression didn't change. "She says otherwise." Of course she did. From the back, a man cleared his throat softly. Another passenger adjusted in their seat. Small sounds, small movements, signals that people were paying attention now. Still, no one spoke. Lily stood near the galley, her hands clenched together so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. She looked from Claire to Marcus to the captain, her breathing shallow. She had seen it. Every second of it. But the weight of the moment pressed down on her, heavy and immediate. One word from her had shifted everything, or cost her everything. Ross straightened, his voice rising just enough to close the conversation. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "You're going to remain seated for the rest of the flight. No more movement, no more disruption. If this continues, we will have to take further action when we land." Further action. The meaning was clear. Marcus held his gaze. Then, slowly, he sat back down. Not because he had been ordered, but because he had chosen to. That difference didn't register to most of the cabin, but it registered to Lily, to Victor, and somewhere, deep in the quiet, to Claire. Ross gave a short nod, as if the situation had been resolved, and turned back toward the cockpit. "Claire," he said, "stay with the cabin." "Of course, Captain." He disappeared behind the door again, the lock clicking shut with a final hollow sound. The moment lingered. Claire exhaled slowly, her shoulders dropping just slightly as she regained control of the space around her. She turned back to the aisle, her posture resetting, her expression smoothing out. But something underneath it had shifted. Marcus sat in 1A, his hands resting lightly on his lap now. Still calm, still quiet, but no longer passive. He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out his phone. The movement was small, almost invisible. He tapped the screen once, then held it there, listening. From across the aisle, Victor watched closely now. From the galley, Lily's breath caught again. Because something about the way Marcus held that phone didn't look like someone calling for help. It looked like someone giving a signal. Marcus spoke softly. Just a few words, barely audible over the hum of the engines. "Execute it." He ended the call, set the phone down, and leaned back in his seat. The cabin remained quiet, but the silence had changed. It wasn't passive anymore. It was waiting. Because somewhere beyond the walls of that aircraft, something had just been set in motion. The engines hummed steadily beneath the floor, a low, constant vibration that most passengers had already tuned out. The cabin lights glowed soft and warm, casting long shadows across polished surfaces and half-finished drinks. Everything looked normal again. That was the strangest part. Claire Donovan moved through the aisle with measured precision, her expression composed, her voice steady as she offered refills and checked on passengers. If anyone had boarded the plane at that moment, they would have seen nothing unusual. Just another quiet flight. Just another routine night above the clouds. But for those who had been there, for those who had seen what happened, something felt different. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. Marcus Reed sat in 1A, his posture relaxed, his gaze forward. The faint red mark on his cheek had softened into something less visible, but it hadn't disappeared. Neither had the moment. Across the aisle, Victor Hale leaned back in his seat, his phone resting loosely in his hand. He hadn't resumed recording. He hadn't resumed anything, really. Instead, he watched. Not casually anymore. Carefully. Because that call, those two quiet words, had shifted something. Victor had been in enough rooms, sat across enough tables to recognize the difference between someone reacting and someone acting. He glanced down at his phone, replaying the moment in his mind. Execute it. Simple. Controlled. No hesitation. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. That wasn't how people spoke when they were in trouble. That was how people spoke when they were giving instructions. From the galley, Lily Brooks stood near the service counter, her hands wrapped around a stack of folded towels she had yet to deliver. She hadn't moved since the call, not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't. Her mind kept replaying the same details over and over, the calm, the voice, the way he hadn't looked around to see who was listening, and then the name. When Marcus's phone had lit up for that brief second, she had seen it. Not clearly, not long enough to be certain, but enough. Chairman. The word echoed in her mind, louder than anything said in the cabin. She looked toward the front again. Marcus hadn't moved. Claire had. She was standing near the galley now, her back partially turned, speaking quietly into the cabin interphone. Her voice was low, controlled, but there was a tightness in it now, a strain that hadn't been there before. Just keeping you informed, she was saying. Passenger in 1A. Yes, I've handled it. Handled it. Lily swallowed. Claire ended the call and turned, her eyes scanning the cabin again. When they landed on Marcus, something flickered, brief, almost imperceptible. Uncertainty. It disappeared just as quickly. Claire straightened, smoothing her uniform as if resetting herself once more. Control was something she had built her career on. It wasn't something she let slip easily. But control required confidence, and for the first time since the flight began, hers wasn't complete. Lily, she said. Lily looked up immediately. Yes? Bring towels to the front, Claire said. Now. The words were sharp, but there was something underneath them. Something closer to correction than command. Lily nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. She stepped forward, the stack of towels held carefully in her hands, each movement deliberate, as if she were walking into something she didn't fully understand. As she approached seat 1A, the cabin seemed to narrow. The distance felt longer than it was. Victor watched her. Claire watched her. And Marcus. Marcus simply turned his head. Their eyes met for the first time. Up close, the calm was even more noticeable. Not distant. Not cold. Just steady. Lily hesitated for a fraction of a second, then held out the towels. I'm sorry, she said softly, for earlier. Marcus took one, unfolding it slowly. Thank you, he replied. That was it. No accusation, no anger, just two simple words. But they landed heavier than anything else that had been said all night. Lily's throat tightened slightly. She stepped back, her hands empty now, her chest rising and falling just a little faster. As she turned to leave, she glanced once more at his tray. The tablet was back on. The screen angled just enough for her to catch a glimpse. Not everything. Just enough. Columns of figures, highlighted lines, and at the top, Caldwell Meridian Holdings, Strategic Control Pathways. Her breath caught. The name meant nothing to her, but the tone of it did. It wasn't casual. It wasn't personal. It was corporate. Serious. Structured. Important. She turned away quickly, her mind racing now, trying to connect pieces that didn't quite fit. Behind her, Victor leaned slightly toward Marcus. "Busy night?" he asked, his voice light, but his eyes sharp. Marcus didn't look at him. Something like that. Victor studied him for a moment longer. "Sounded important," he said. "That call." Marcus reached for his glass, taking a small sip of water. "It was," he said. No elaboration, no explanation. Victor smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I figured." He leaned back again, his posture relaxed, but his attention fixed. Because now he knew something. Not everything, but enough. Enough to understand that the man sitting beside him was not what he appeared to be. At the front of the cabin, Claire watched the interaction from a distance. Her arms were crossed now, just slightly, her fingers pressing into the fabric of her sleeves. She had heard the call, not clearly, but enough to catch the tone, and tone mattered. She turned away, stepping into the galley again, reaching for a glass she didn't need, adjusting items that were already in place. Her movements were precise, controlled, but faster now, because somewhere beneath the surface, a thought had begun to form, and once it started, it wouldn't stop. Back in 1A, Marcus set his glass down and closed his tablet once more. The screen went dark. The information disappeared, but the effect remained. He leaned back into his seat, his eyes forward again, waiting. Because whatever had just begun was no longer confined to the cabin. And as the plane continued its steady path across the night sky, the quiet tension that filled the space between every passenger, every glance, every unspoken question, began to shift. Not into clarity, not yet, but into something closer to recognition. Because the silence wasn't just watching anymore, it was listening. And for the first time since the flight began, it was starting to understand. It began with something small, so small that most people wouldn't have noticed it at all. A pause in Claire Donovan's step, a hesitation that lasted no more than a second as she reached for a glass, her hand hovering just slightly before she picked it up. But in a cabin trained to run on precision, even a second mattered. Victor Hale saw it. So did Lily. And somewhere behind the cockpit door, so did someone else. The interphone clicked softly. Claire turned her head, her expression tightening again as she stepped into the galley and picked it up. "Yes?" Her voice was low, controlled, but the reply on the other end didn't match her tone. Even from a distance, Lily could hear it. The clipped urgency, the shift in cadence that came when something wasn't routine anymore. Claire's posture straightened. "What?" she said, quieter now. A pause. Her eyes flicked toward the cabin, toward seat 1A. Another pause. "No, there must be a mistake," she added, but this time the confidence wasn't there. Not fully. She listened again, her grip tightening on the receiver. "Understood," she said finally. Then she hung up, and for a moment she didn't move. She just stood there, staring at nothing, her reflection faintly visible in the polished metal of the galley wall. Then she turned, and for the first time since the flight began, she looked at Marcus Reed differently, not with dismissal, not with irritation, but with something far less comfortable: uncertainty. Back in the cabin, the shift was subtle but real. Passengers who had been pretending not to watch now watched openly. The woman in the cream coat set her phone down entirely, her attention fixed forward. The man behind her leaned slightly into the aisle, his glasses forgotten in his hand. Victor sat up straighter, his casual posture gone now, replaced by something sharper. because something had changed, and everyone could feel it. Claire stepped back into the aisle, her movements slower now, more deliberate. She walked toward the front, stopping just short of Marcus's seat. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just stood there. Marcus didn't look up right away. He let the silence stretch. Then slowly, he lifted his eyes. Their gazes met again. But this time, it wasn't the same. "Is there something else you need?" Marcus asked. His voice was calm, unchanged. Claire opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a brief second, it seemed like she might say something different, something honest. But then she straightened. "Everything is under control," she said instead. The words sounded hollow, even to her. Marcus held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once. "I'm sure you believe that." Claire's jaw tightened. She turned away quickly, her composure slipping just slightly as she moved back toward the galley. Victor leaned forward. "That didn't sound routine," he said quietly. Marcus didn't answer. Victor studied him, then glanced toward the cockpit. "Something's going on," he added. "Yes," Marcus said. Victor blinked. That was it. No explanation, no denial, just confirmation. Victor sat back slowly, his mind turning now, trying to connect pieces that didn't fit. Because this wasn't how these situations ended. They didn't shift. They didn't unravel. They closed. Neatly, quietly. But this was opening. From the galley, Lily stepped forward again, her movements hesitant but driven by something stronger now. She stopped just behind Claire, her voice low. "What did they say?" she asked. Claire didn't turn around. "Nothing you need to worry about," she replied. But her tone gave her away. Lily swallowed. "Is it about him?" That made Claire turn. Her eyes were sharp now. "Go back to your station," she said. "Claire, I said go back." The words came harder this time. Lily flinched slightly, but she didn't move right away, because now she understood something. Not everything, but enough. Enough to know that the story she had been told wasn't the real one. Behind them, the cockpit door opened again. Captain Daniel Ross stepped out, but this time his stride was different, slower, measured. His usual certainty replaced by something less stable. His eyes moved across the cabin quickly, scanning faces, reading the room. Then they landed on Marcus, and stayed there, for a long moment, too long. Victor saw it. So did Lily. So did Claire. Ross walked forward, stopping just short of seat 1A. The entire cabin seemed to hold its breath. "Mr. Reed," he said. "Not sir. Not passenger. A name." Marcus looked up. "Yes, Captain?" Ross hesitated. Just a fraction, but it was enough. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" he asked. The shift was unmistakable. The authority was still there. But it was different now, less certain, less absolute. Marcus considered him for a second, then nodded. "You can." Ross glanced around the cabin, aware now of the eyes on him, the attention he could no longer control. "Perhaps somewhere more private," he added. Marcus didn't move. "No," he said. One word, simple, final. Ross's jaw tightened. "This isn't the place." "It is now," Marcus replied. The cabin went still again. Not the same silence as before. Not passive. Not indifferent. This silence was watching, measuring, waiting. Ross exhaled slowly, the sound controlled but strained. He looked at Claire, then back at Marcus. Then, finally, he spoke. "There's been a development," he said. The words were careful, chosen. Marcus leaned back slightly in his seat. I'm aware. Ross blinked. Of course he was. That realization landed quietly, but it carried weight. Behind him, Claire shifted, her composure cracking just enough for the tension to show. What development? She asked. Ross didn't answer her right away, because for the first time since the flight began, he wasn't sure who he should be answering to, and in that moment, the balance in the room shifted. Not completely, not yet, but enough for everyone to feel it, because the truth was no longer hidden. It was moving, and it was getting closer, and for the first time, the people who had stayed silent were beginning to realize they might not stay that way much longer. The cabin didn't feel like a cabin anymore. It felt like a room where something had gone wrong, and everyone knew it. No one spoke right away. Not Claire. Not Victor. Not even Captain Ross. The only sound was the steady hum of the engines, the quiet rhythm of a machine that kept moving forward no matter what happened inside it. Marcus Reed sat in 1A, his posture unchanged, his expression calm in a way that now felt different, no longer passive, no longer misunderstood, recognized. Victor shifted in his seat, slower this time, his usual confidence stripped down to something closer to caution. You said you were aware, Victor said quietly, leaning just enough for his voice to carry. Aware of what, exactly? Marcus didn't look at him. Of what happens next, he replied. Victor frowned. That wasn't an answer, but it wasn't a deflection either. It was something else. Across the aisle, the woman in the cream coat straightened, her attention no longer hidden. 2 rows behind her, the man with the glasses leaned forward openly now, no longer pretending to read. The silence had changed. It wasn't protective anymore. It was expectant. Captain Ross exhaled slowly, his hand resting briefly against the edge of a seat as if grounding himself. Mr. Reed, he said, his voice more careful now. There's been communication from operations. Claire stepped forward immediately. What kind of communication? She asked, her voice tighter than before. Ross didn't answer her. Not right away. His eyes stayed on Marcus. Because whatever this was, it involved him. Something I should know? Marcus asked. The question was simple, but it landed like a weight. Ross hesitated. That hesitation didn't go unnoticed. Victor's eyes narrowed. Lily felt it in her chest. Even Claire felt it. And for the first time, she didn't like what it meant. Finally, Ross spoke. They're reviewing the passenger manifest, he said, and there's been an update regarding your booking. Claire let out a short breath, almost a laugh. There's nothing to update, she said quickly. We already verified. Claire, Ross cut in. The tone stopped her cold, not loud, but final. For a moment, no one moved. Ross turned slightly, lowering his voice just enough to make it controlled, but not private. The system flagged his profile, he said. Priority review. Claire blinked. That doesn't make sense, she replied. He's just... She stopped. The word didn't come out, but everyone heard it anyway. Just. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Just what? He asked. Claire's mouth opened, closed. Her eyes flicked toward the passengers, toward the watching faces, the attention she could no longer control. I meant, she started. You meant what you saw, Marcus said. Not accusing, not loud, just accurate. Claire swallowed. Victor leaned back slowly, his expression changing now, not into sympathy, not into apology, but into something sharper. Interest. Because now it wasn't just about what had happened, it was about what it meant. Lily stepped forward again. This time she didn't stop. "I saw it," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Every head turned. Claire's eyes snapped toward her. "Lily, he didn't touch you," Lily continued, her words shaking slightly, but holding. "He didn't do anything." The cabin held its breath. Claire's face changed. Not all at once, but enough. "That's not what happened," she said quickly. "It is," Lily replied. The moment stretched. Victor looked from one to the other, his phone now completely forgotten in his hand. The man behind him leaned further into the aisle. The woman in the cream coat nodded faintly, as if confirming something to herself. Small shifts, but undeniable. Ross closed his eyes for a second. Just one. Then opened them again, because the situation had moved beyond control, beyond procedure, into something else. Marcus reached forward and picked up his tablet. The screen lit. He turned it slightly, not to show it, not to present it, but just enough for Ross to see. Lines of data, structured, precise, and at the top, Caldwell Meridian Holdings. Ross's expression tightened. Claire saw it. "What is that?" she asked, her voice thinner now. Marcus didn't answer her. He looked at Ross. "Would you like me to explain?" he said. "Or would you prefer to wait for the next call?" Ross didn't respond right away, because now he understood. Not everything, but enough. Enough to know that whatever this was, it wasn't going to stay in this cabin. Victor sat forward slowly. "Hold on," he said. "Caldwell Meridian." The name clicked. Not fully, but enough to trigger something. He looked at Marcus again. Really looked this time. And for the first time since the flight began. He didn't see a man in a hoodie. He saw something else. Something that didn't belong in this moment, but controlled it anyway. Claire shook her head slightly. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You're making this into something it's not." Marcus turned to her. "This stopped being small the moment you decided it was," he said. The words settled into the room, heavy, unavoidable. Claire stepped back. Just one step. But it was enough. Because that was the moment. The exact moment when the story she had created began to fall apart. Ross straightened. His voice came out slower now. "Mr. Reed," he said, "I need to confirm something." Marcus nodded. "Go ahead." Ross swallowed, then asked the question that had already begun to form in every mind in that cabin. "Who are you?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He let the silence return. Not the same silence as before. This one was different, full, charged, ready. Then he spoke, and when he did, everything changed. "Someone your company should have recognized before this ever happened." The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be, because in that moment, the truth had already started to crack through the surface, and once it did, there was no putting it back. The silence didn't break. It deepened. Not the kind that comes from confusion, but the kind that follows realization. The kind that spreads slowly, like a crack moving through glass, invisible at first, until suddenly, everything is different. Claire Donovan stood frozen near the aisle, her hands no longer steady, her posture no longer perfect. The confidence she had worn like armor now sat unevenly on her shoulders. "Stop this," she said, but her voice didn't carry the way it used to. "You're turning this into something it isn't." Marcus Reed didn't respond right away. He looked at her, not with anger, not with triumph, but with a quiet certainty that made the space between them feel smaller. "It already is," he said. Captain Ross shifted where he stood, his mind racing faster than his training could contain. Procedures were clear when things were simple. Disruptive passenger, crew complaint, de-escalate. document. But this wasn't simple anymore. His radio crackled faintly at his hip. A second call. He stepped back instinctively, pulling it up, his voice low. "Ross." The reply came sharp, urgent, stripped of all routine. "Captain, do not escalate the situation with passenger Marcus Reed." Ross's eyes flicked immediately toward seat 1A. "I already have a report from my crew. Captain, listen carefully," the voice cut in. "Caldwell Meridian Holdings has just acquired a controlling stake in Atlantic Crown Airways." Ross's breath caught. For a second, he didn't understand the words. Then he did, and everything shifted. "That passenger," the voice continued, "is Marcus Reed. He is the acquisition lead. Effective immediately, he represents controlling interest." The cabin suddenly felt smaller, tighter. Ross turned slowly, looking back through the narrow aisle, at the man in the hoodie, the man with the calm, the man who hadn't raised his voice once. "Understood," Ross said quietly. He lowered the radio. For a moment he didn't move. Claire stepped toward him. "What is it?" she asked. "What are they saying?" Ross didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Not yet. Because saying it out loud would make it real. Marcus watched him, not impatient, not pushing, just waiting. Victor Hale leaned forward, his voice low but urgent now. "What did they say?" he asked. Ross looked at him, then at Claire, then finally back at Marcus. And in that moment, he made a choice. "They confirmed your identity," Ross said. Claire frowned. "What identity?" she snapped. Ross didn't look at her. He looked at Marcus. "Sir, is it accurate that you are representing Caldwell Meridian Holdings in the acquisition of this airline?" The words landed like a weight dropped into still water. No splash, just depth. Claire blinked. Once. Twice. "That doesn't make any sense, Maha," she said. "He's—" Again the word stopped, but this time no one needed to hear it. Marcus leaned back slightly, his hands resting loosely together. "Yes," he said. One word. Clear. Final. Victor's face changed. Not slowly, instantly. The casual confidence vanished, replaced by something sharper, more calculating. Because now, he understood. Not fully, but enough. Enough to know that the man beside him wasn't just important. He was dangerous. Not in the way of anger, but in the way of consequence. Claire let out a small laugh. It sounded wrong. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You're telling me he owns... what? This plane? The company?" Ross didn't answer, because the silence said enough. Claire's smile faded. Her eyes moved back to Marcus, searching now, trying to find something, anything that made sense. But the hoodie was still there. The worn edges. The calm. Nothing had changed. Except everything. "That's not possible," she whispered. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "It is," he said. The cabin shifted again. Passengers who had stayed silent now looked at each other, then back at the front. Phones were no longer hidden. Eyes were no longer careful. The story had changed, and they knew it. Lily Brooks stepped forward again, her voice barely above a whisper. You knew this whole time?" she asked. Marcus looked at her. "Yes." Not defensive, not proud, just honest. Claire took a step back, then another. Because now the moment replayed differently in her mind. The boarding pass. The calm, the call, the silence. Every choice she had made, every word, every action, shifted meaning. "You set this up," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "You wanted this to happen?" Marcus shook his head once. "No," he said. "I just didn't stop it." The words landed harder than anything else. Victor exhaled slowly. "Jesus," he murmured under his breath. Ross straightened, the weight of the situation settling fully now. "Sir," he said carefully, "we will be addressing this with full cooperation once we land." Marcus nodded. "I expect that." But he didn't stop there. Because this wasn't just about what had already happened. It was about what hadn't been seen yet. Marcus reached forward and opened his tablet again. The screen lit up. Data, structured, precise. He turned it slightly, just enough for Ross to see. "Before we land," Marcus said, "there's something else you need to look at." Ross stepped closer despite himself. "What is this?" Marcus's voice remained steady. "Internal audit findings," he said. "Linked to this aircraft?" Ross frowned. "What kind of findings?" Marcus looked at him. "The kind that make this situation," he gestured lightly between them, "look small." Claire's breath caught. Victor leaned forward again. Lily felt her pulse quicken. Because the story, the one they thought they understood, wasn't finished. Not even close. Marcus tapped the screen once. A file opened. Highlighted sections, red flags. One line stood out. Unreported cargo discrepancies. Recurring. Ross's expression darkened. "What is this?" he asked again, slower now. Marcus met his eyes. "That," he said, "is why I'm on this flight." The cabin went completely still. Because now, it wasn't just about a slap. It wasn't just about a lie. It was about something bigger. Something hidden. Something that had been happening long before any of them stepped onto that plane. And for the first time, everyone in that cabin understood the truth. This was never just about one moment. It was about everything behind it. The weight of that truth settled over the cabin like pressure at altitude. No one spoke. No one needed to. The soft glow of overhead lights now felt too bright, too revealing. The quiet luxury of first class, leather seats, polished surfaces, crystal glasses, suddenly looked different, not elegant, exposed. Captain Daniel Ross stood in the aisle, his posture rigid, his mind working through layers of realization faster than he could show it. His training had prepared him for emergencies, for turbulence, for mechanical failure. Not for this. Not for discovering that the man his crew had just accused was the one now holding the company's future in his hands. He cleared his throat, but the sound came out thinner than intended. "We'll be landing in New York as scheduled," he said, addressing no one in particular. "Ground personnel will handle any further review." Further review. The words sounded small, insufficient. Marcus Reed watched him for a moment, then gave a slight nod. "That would be appropriate," he said. No threat, no satisfaction, just acknowledgement. Claire Donovan stood near the galley, her back pressed lightly against the counter, as if she needed something solid to hold her up. Her eyes moved between Marcus, the captain, and the passengers who were no longer pretending not to see. Her control was gone, not all at once, but enough. "This is being blown out of proportion," she said, her voice unsteady now. "We don't even know if any of this is real." "It is," Victor Hale said quietly. All eyes turned to him. He sat forward slightly, his phone now resting on his lap, forgotten. "I know Caldwell Meridian," he continued. "Everyone in finance does. If he says he's leading an acquisition, He shook his head slowly. Then it's already happening. Claire stared at him. You're serious? She asked. Victor met her gaze. For your sake, he said. I wish I wasn't. The cabin shifted again, not in confusion, in acceptance. Because now the pieces fit. The calm, the call, the way Marcus had never once tried to defend himself, because he didn't need to. Lily Brooks stood near the aisle, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She looked at Marcus, then at Claire, then at the captain. Her voice came out soft. But what about what happened? She asked. The slap, the accusation. Marcus turned his head slightly toward her. That will be addressed, he said. Simple, certain. The plane began its descent. The subtle tilt downward pressed gently against the cabin, a quiet reminder that the ground was getting closer. And with it, consequences. The engines shifted tone, lowering into a steady, controlled hum. Outside the windows, the darkness of the sky began to break, scattered lights of the east coast appearing far below like distant sparks. No one returned to their drinks. No one resumed their conversations. The silence stayed. But it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't passive. It was reflective. Because now everyone in that cabin understood something they hadn't before. They hadn't just witnessed an incident. They had participated in it. Through silence, through assumption, through choosing not to see. Claire felt it most of all. Her breathing had slowed, but her hands still trembled slightly at her sides. Every moment replayed in her mind, sharper now, clearer. The boarding pass, the tone, the dismissal, the slap, the lie. Each one heavier than the last. She looked at Marcus again, searching for something. Anger, judgment, anything that would make sense of what was happening. But his expression hadn't changed. That was the worst part. He wasn't angry. He wasn't satisfied. He was finished. The landing gear lowered with a deep mechanical rumble. The cabin lights flickered slightly as the aircraft prepared to touch down. A flight attendant's voice came over the intercom. Calm, professional, routine. Cabin crew, prepare for landing. Routine. The word felt almost ironic now. The plane touched down harder than usual. A solid, undeniable impact. The wheels met the runway with a jolt that ran through every seat, every armrest, every passenger holding their breath. Reverse thrust roared briefly, then faded as the aircraft slowed. No applause. No relief. Just silence. The plane didn't taxi to a standard gate. It slowed, then turned, and stopped. Not at a terminal, not at a jet bridge, but on a remote stretch of the tarmac, far from the usual traffic. Claire noticed first. Her breath caught. "That's not," she whispered. Victor leaned toward the window. His expression shifted again. "No," he said quietly. "It's not." Outside, vehicles approached. Not service carts, not baggage trucks, dark SUVs, unmarked, deliberate. The cabin door remained closed for a long moment. Then, it opened. Cold night air rushed in, sharp and real. Footsteps followed, heavy, purposeful. Federal agents entered the aircraft with quiet efficiency, their presence filling the space in a way authority alone never could. The lead agent stepped forward, her gaze moving quickly through the cabin before settling on Marcus. "Mr. Reed?" she asked. Marcus stood. "Yes." She nodded once. "I'm Special Agent Harris. We received your report." Report. The word confirmed everything. Behind her, two more agents moved toward the cockpit. Another stepped into the aisle. Claire's voice broke. "This is insane," she said. "He assaulted me. I told you." The agent didn't look at her. Not yet. "Ma'am, please remain where you are," she said. Claire froze, because now no one was listening to her. Lily stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "He didn't touch her," she said. "I saw everything." The agent's eyes shifted briefly to her, then back to Marcus. "Understood," she said. Captain Ross emerged from the cockpit slowly, not as a figure of authority, as a man who knew exactly what was coming. "Captain Daniel Ross?" the agent asked. "Yes." "We'll need you to step forward, please." Claire's breath quickened. "No," she said. "This is wrong. You can't—" The click of metal stopped her, sharp, final. One of the agents had placed restraints on her wrists. Her voice rose, panicked now. "I've worked for this airline for 15 years, she said. "You don't understand." The agent's voice was calm. "We understand more than you think." Claire looked at Marcus one last time, desperate, searching. But there was nothing in his expression to hold on to. No anger, no mercy, just truth. She lowered her head, and for the first time since the flight began, she was silent. The agents moved efficiently, escorting both her and the captain toward the door. The cabin watched. No one turned away this time, because now they understood what silence had allowed, what judgment had created, what truth had revealed. Marcus remained standing in the aisle, the red mark on his cheek barely visible now under the cabin lights. Lily looked at him. "Is it over?" she asked softly. Marcus shook his head. "Not yet," he said, "because what happened in the air was only the beginning, and what waited on the ground would change everything that came after." 3 days later, Manhattan moved like it always did. Traffic flowed in sharp lines between towers of glass and steel. Yellow cabs cut through intersections. Pedestrians crossed with purpose, coats pulled tight against the early morning wind that funneled down the avenues. Nothing in the city paused. Nothing in the city remembered. But inside the headquarters of Atlantic Crown Airways, everything had changed. The building stood tall on Madison Avenue, its mirrored exterior reflecting the skyline like a polished lie. Inside, the lobby was quiet, too quiet for a weekday morning. Conversations were hushed, movements were careful, because everyone had seen the video. Not all of it, just enough. A passenger, a confrontation, federal agents boarding a plane, and then names. Marcus Reed, Caldwell Meridian, acquisition. Now, the boardroom on the 32nd floor was filled. 12 executives sat around a long, dark wood table, their expressions tight, their voices gone. Tablets lay in front of them, untouched. Coffee cups had gone cold. They weren't waiting for a meeting. They were waiting for an answer. The door opened. Marcus Reed walked in. No hoodie this time. A tailored charcoal suit. Clean lines. Polished shoes. The same calm expression, unchanged. But now, it made sense. Every head turned. No one spoke. He didn't ask for permission. He walked to the head of the table and sat down. The quiet that followed was absolute. Nathan Brooks stood near the screen at the front of the room, his posture composed, his voice ready. With a single tap, the display came alive. Slides, numbers, data, real. Atlantic Crown Airways is currently carrying a debt exposure exceeding $3 billion, Nathan began. Internal audits show repeated discrepancies in cargo reporting, unresolved compliance issues, and a pattern of suppressed complaints. Each word landed like weight. No one interrupted. No one could. Marcus leaned back slightly, his hands resting on the table, his eyes moving slowly from one executive to the next. Not accusing, not angry, just seeing. Nathan continued. Customer complaints involving discrimination have been logged and closed without investigation. Employee reports of misconduct were either dismissed or removed from internal systems. A man near the end of the table shifted in his seat. That's not entirely accurate, he said quietly. Nathan didn't look at him. It is fully documented, he replied. The screen changed. Evidence. Timestamps. Records. Silence returned. Marcus spoke. His voice was calm, measured. But now, it carried authority no one questioned. This company didn't fail overnight, he said. It failed slowly, quietly, in ways that were easy to ignore. He paused, letting the words settle. It failed every time someone decided not to see what was right in front of them. No one moved, because they understood, not just the numbers, the meaning. Marcus reached forward and placed a thin folder on the table. It made a soft sound, but in the silence, it echoed. Effective immediately, he said. The current executive structure is dissolved. A breath caught somewhere in the room. No one protested, because no one could. This airline will be rebuilt, Marcus continued. New leadership, independent oversight. Every unresolved complaint reopened. Every employee who spoke up and was ignored will be heard. He looked around the table, not with anger, with clarity. This isn't about punishment, he said. It's about correction. The door opened again, softly. All eyes turned. Lily Brooks stepped inside. She wore a simple navy suit, her hands clasped lightly in front of her. She looked different, nervous, yes, but steadier than before, stronger. Marcus nodded toward her. This is Lily Brooks, he said. Effective today, she will serve as Vice President of Customer Experience. The room stirred, not loudly, but enough. A man across the table frowned. With respect, he said, she's a junior flight attendant. Marcus's eyes moved to him. She's the only person on that aircraft who chose truth when silence was easier, he said. The room went quiet again, because there was no argument for that. Lily stood a little straighter, not because she felt powerful, but because she felt seen. Marcus stood. The meeting was over. Not with a vote, not with discussion, with decision. He walked toward the door, then paused briefly, looking back at the room. No one is invisible, he said. Then he left. Outside, the city moved on, as it always did. Marcus stepped onto the sidewalk, the cool air brushing against his face. The noise of traffic filled the space around him. Horns, engines, voices layered together in a constant rhythm. He walked a few steps, then stopped. Near the corner, an older man struggled with a worn grocery bag, the bottom threatening to give way. Items shifted dangerously inside. Marcus stepped forward without hesitation. Here, he said, taking the bag gently. Let me help you with that. The man looked up, surprised. Appreciate it, he said. Marcus adjusted the weight, securing the contents, making sure nothing would fall. He handed it back. The man smiled. Thank you. Marcus nodded. Take care. He turned and walked away. No cameras, no audience, no recognition. Just a simple moment. The same kind of moment no one had noticed on the plane. But now, it meant something more. Because the truth had been revealed, not just about power, but about character. And somewhere, in the quiet space after everything had happened, one idea remained, clear, unshaken. A person's worth is never defined by how they look, but by how they choose to treat others when no one is watching. And maybe, just maybe, that was the part that mattered most. If you had been on that flight, would you have stayed silent? Or would you have been the one to speak? Because in the end, it wasn't the slap that defined that flight. It was the moment Lily Brooks stepped forward, voice shaking, and told the truth when everyone else chose comfort over courage. This story isn't about power showing up in a suit. It's about the cost of staying quiet when something isn't right. Because sometimes, one honest voice is all it takes to break a lie that everyone else agreed to ignore. Next time you see something that doesn't sit right, don't wait for someone else to speak first. Remember what Lily did, and ask yourself if you're willing to be that one voice when it matters. If this story meant something to you, comment 1 below, and tell me, have you ever stayed silent when you wish you had spoken up? Stay with me, because the next story might hit even closer to home.